There's no liquid in this, by the way. This is just a sham brand placement. Shop.crossandcorner.org if you're very interested in copying yourself a very nice mug. Besides from that, 'tis the season to be jolly, and not so jolly considering the state of the UK. But anyways, I'm Young Bob, and let's get straight into it. Now, of course, I, like all the times throughout the week, have been living in a suitcase across the country, covering all of the news and some degrees of activism. Some would say November is too early to celebrate Christmas. However, I'm a very Christian-centric individual, and I've also been very busy this time of season. So we're going to be going through my arrests, some of the last UKIP demonstrations you'll see this year, and of course the Labour Party's cock-up when it comes to their yearly budget. So of course I've been all over social media in regards to my arrest. However, we'll take that aside for a moment and actually go into the core story when it comes to what has happened for this past week. So without further ado, let's get into the news. Now, we couldn't start off the news without speaking about the massive elephant in the room, which is the momentum gaining from the Maccabi Tel Aviv versus Aston Villa game.
Back towards Morgan Rogers. Flicks it into the path of Martin, right by the byline. Martin, oh, he's fired it in!
Up until the very much unambitious 300 people that showed up, compared to the over 3,000 predicted people from the independent candidate of Ladywood, Ahmed Yaqub.
I've heard activists from all over the country are going to be present in Birmingham on November 6th because they want to show solidarity with the Palestinians, and hopefully the numbers that I am getting or predictions of people coming is over 300,000 people at this moment in time, and I'm sure more people will join the movement and more people will join the cause.
The sectarian, which of course is a lawyer that has Quranic verses on his desk. However, the event itself was very unambitious. There weren't as many people as advertised, and besides from the quite vile campaign the day before, in which during bonfire night we had youths that were all ballied up attacking a police van, and of course propaganda propagated everywhere like a raise the colour-esque operation in which it stated that if you saw a Zionist, you should call the terrorist hotline. Of course, over 11 arrests across the entire operation, and a lot of the times the Aston Villa supporters didn't support what had happened with the Palestinian coalition. Of course, this was meant to be a national demonstration to stop Birmingham. However, it was only about 300 Muslims across Trinity Road, in which case you saw Aston Villa supporters during halftime shouting at them, saying that you should shove your Palestine up your arse.
You can sing your Palestine up your arse. You can sing your Palestine. Sing your Palestine. Sing your Palestine up your arse.
There were many independent media there that were being intimidated by the police. We saw that 2CTV and Rebel News were kind of all shoved off to the corner to ensure that there were no casualties, as it were, and there was a Section 35 disbursement warning for anyone that was supposedly disturbing the police to leave the entire Birmingham area. It would have been interesting to see how it would play out if it turns out people that gave that section actually lived and resided in Birmingham.
Stop it in Clearbeck. I know it's Christmas, but behave yourself.
So over 100 to 150 UKIPers attended the last demonstration out of the Knicks mass deportation tour.
You're an absolute disgrace. You're an absolute disgrace. Why should we pay for your narcissism? Why should we pay for your godlessness? No end in sight. These people, patriots, they are parasites who want open borders.
In which Sheffield, an area that has recently been plagued in controversy over its refusal to organise a lighting on demonstration for the Christmas lights, of course, being this sort of advertising-friendly campaign across every single town, village and city in the UK, which you get celebrities on stage turning on the lights, you have some sort of advertisement for small businesses there, really brings in thousands of people for families to kind of celebrate the starting of the Christmas season. I imagine it's kind of a reminder for many parents to start buying Christmas gifts, knowing what their children want. And it's really good. I think many people, including myself, have been in attendance for their local ceremonies. And for a Muslim mayor to say that there are too many people that the organisers could not handle is a dishonest attempt to kind of remove Christmas towards the country's kind of heart celebration of these sort of holidays. And it's an introduction to sectarian politics. So we had that coming around, and of course the original muster point was at Sheffield Cathedral. However, like Whitechapel, there was a day in which they were told that they were only supposed to muster at Tudor Square, with Stand Up to Racism and Antifa actually organising at the original UKIP muster point.
Oh, look at him with his little security team! You little bitch!
It's called a Dyer! It's called a Dyer! Get back now! Get back! Get back!
About 800 Antifa demonstrators, and plastered all throughout the city were digital billboards in which reminding the sections that were both in place for Stand Up to Racism and UKIP, with a police kettle for both organisers until the 3:30 mark, in which they were both expected to leave, with the Section 14 also being in place.
Is there any opportunity to get through? They're being allowed to get through? And she is as well?
People are worried about the business outfit. Part of the...
We're not.
Part of it.
Section 17 of the Public Order Act states that journalists aren't prone to the same sections as activists. We're not activists.
Now, with a £30 billion black hole in the government finances, with up to £3 trillion national debt, discussions around benefits, especially with Reform and Labour, have always been quite controversial, whether we should cut benefits in order to actually finance this country. Now, does benefits actually benefit people when it comes to affording the cost of living crisis? Or is it just an extra spendage on this government for the bone idle not to work? Two-child benefit cap is a simple. It's this understanding that we should not pay benefits for someone who does not have more than 2 children. And this cap was, of course, voted on, the first piece of legislation voted for by the Labour Party, where we saw people like Sarah Sultana going out against Labour whips, enforcing them to vote for the cap to be introduced. An interesting discussion by the Labour Party would be to increase the cap to 3 or possibly 4 children, or for there just to be a benefit cap, but you can claim up until that cap is being reached on how many children.
A child should not be penalised because their parents don't have very much money.
Hi everyone, it's Speaks Freely.
Hello everyone, my name's Emma Dunwell and welcome to the Speak Freely podcast.
And here we have the pink ladies protesting. And so someone has just thrown a bottle of an unknown liquid off the bridge. It looked like urine.
So typically I'm like schizophrenically speaking towards the camera by myself, alone in the studio. However, on this special occasion, I do have the very lovely Emma Dunwell here today. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks for the intro.
Yeah, well, of course, like I said before, typically I'm just by myself, but that's not typically the case. Most of the time on the ground I'm with yourself, Jack.
I know that Jack Hadfield got pepper sprayed. I know that young Bob got some in his mouth. AY said he was pepper sprayed as well. They're all fine.
I've been spat at, egged at, kettled in, attacked, pepper sprayed.
My next goal is creating a magazine, so obviously there's designing and printing and everything like that. I'm going to design a physical magazine to get around the online harms bill. I think that we're going to be a lot safer if we return to written word.
And I've heard that you've had this recent initiative that I may be able to contribute to, so if you would give the stage and kind of introduce the idea to the lovely audience here.
Yep, so, well, with everything recently with digital ID and the online harms bill, I think that a great way for citizen journalists, independent journalists to get around that and really get the news out there to people would be going back to written word. So I'm trying to start a magazine and we're going to call it Proper-Gander. So it's a play on the word propaganda. Hopefully we'll be undoing some of the misinformation that the mainstream feed you.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
And the idea is that it will be something that anyone and everyone who wants to can contribute to, and it will be given out for free on protests, so it's solely for the cause. And also, hopefully, eventually it will be mailed out to people's houses if they want it delivered as well.
And, you know, typically magazines are commonly related to scandal. That wouldn't be the case for protesting. And we've just had the story about the BBC's scandalous editing of the Trump panorama documentary.
The president has made it very clear that this is a leftist propaganda machine that is unfortunately subsidized by British taxpayers, and he thinks that's extremely unfortunate for the great people of the United Kingdom and Great Britain. And I think that the president was deeply concerned by the editing, the purposeful and dishonest editing of his speech that was so clearly fake news. And he rightfully dubbed that term many years ago. And this is a classic example of that. As you know, the president's external legal counsel has filed a lawsuit against the BBC. We expect that to continue. And whether they apologize or not is up to them.
So do you think this is kind of a useful time to kind of have written documents? Of course, they're less reliable to be preserved. However, less likely going to be doctored when transmitted to the most amount of people.
I do think that typically most people would prefer written word, especially when they are looking to have something that hasn't, like you said, been doctored in any way. Obviously, people have their opinions, especially independent entities, the people that would be wanting to contribute to the magazine. So the way that I'm hoping that we could get around that and keep everyone happy would be to have a layout within each person's article would be, here's the facts, here's the story, and then in another section it can be, here's my take on it, here's my opinion, what do we think about this, and kind of open it up with more thought-provoking questions as well.
One of the things I always think is interesting with citizens journalism and independent media is that slowly evolved. So what used to start as a phenomena at like migrant hotel protests, where you had a guy with an iPhone filming, then that being pushed in social media, being used mostly by legacy media, it's now completely strayed away from that sort of dependency. You're now seeing people independently of being a contributor for like Rebel News now being by themselves, doing their own thing. And do you really think this is a step forward and other people will be replicating, you know, doing magazines, newspapers, kind of going backwards towards what the legacy media used to do and kind of innovating that in their own way?
To be honest, I would hope so. I don't know if that's the way that people are looking to go, but I would hope so, because I think that essentially, even though some people might not want to admit it, what we are trying to do in the world of citizen and independent journalism is compete with the narrative of the mainstream media. And obviously the mainstream media, legacy media, they have so many more resources than we do, so much more funding available to them to create things like external websites, podcasts, newspapers, magazines, even, you know, like just submitting forms and things like that. They have a more robust process about people writing in, communicating with their audience. I think that's one of the things that citizen journalists do better, communicating with their audience, because it's kind of bridging the gap between the people and the power. But I do hope that most people will start to go towards other avenues instead of just staying online, because I think that what that will do within citizen journalism and independent journalism is it will get people stuck and allow the legacy media to still continue spreading misinformation in other routes.
Well, that's the thing as well, like mediums of media, it is what composes culture. So even small things like newspapers, for example, those in the shop window, it makes your history, it makes your culture, it surrounds your childhood. So trying to win this sort of war on disinformation includes diversifying where you're transmitting your content to. Especially with magazines and whatnot, it draws in a different sort of audience. So people who may be just walking down protests getting handed this magazine that never really go on social media, they're now able to kind of consume the same content but on a different level.
Essentially, but what I want the magazine to do is, instead of, because at the end of the day, things like X and, live streaming on YouTube is great, but it's all really short form content. I mean, even when you think about it, podcasts, things that are longer, when you think about comparing it to written word and things that could last a lot longer, it's all short form. And none of it really stops to take a deeper look into each one of the topics or reports that it's doing at the time. So I'm hoping that the magazine will be somewhere where all of the topics and all of these news stories do boil down to set kind of subcategories within politics, religion and culture. So I'm hoping that the contributors will be able to, instead of just, giving, oh, this happened on this day, blah, 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 I'm hoping that they can really look into the problem as a whole on a broader scale, look at why it's happening. And also, actually, just to make a quick point, I don't want it to be an echo chamber. I'd like people from different political views to contribute. I'd also like to have a debate section.
And finally, just on an echo chamber, do you not think it will be difficult because, of course, everyone has this sort of common sense understanding that, well, this is like right-wing media. So I'm, of course, not going to go there because it'll be like a sort of trap in terms of trying to have a debate with them.
Well, it won't always be debated. I mean, at the end of the day, I am a firm advocate in free debate. Whether you agree or strongly, maybe even viscerally disagree with someone, I still think you should be able to have a debate, shake hands and walk away and not be violent or aggressive towards each other. I do think that bringing people of different political ideologies to the table to contribute to the magazine is going to be a challenge, but I think it's worth doing because the idea would be that the magazine has something in there for everyone. And also with the debates, if people would like to come and debate, that's great. If not, no one's going to be forced. But I do think that it is necessary, if nothing else, to just see what other people are thinking. I think that that's always useful.
Yeah, well, we always try to encourage freedom of speech, but thank you so much for having yourself on.
Oh, thanks for inviting me.
So it's not just the festive season, it's also bobbing around season. And it's a non-stop tour around the country covering the news and, of course, doing work for Crossing Corner and Turning Point. However, what has swept social media is my sudden arrest at the Birmingham game. I was arrested for failing to comply with a disbursement warning, as they gave me one, and you're just going to see this now, of me trying to speak to a sheikh.
For instance, Hinduism, according to Christians and Muslims, would be false. Judaism, for you and me, would be false because it's tampered. They reject Jesus. According to Christians, they're Jesus killers. They're murderers of Jesus. The Jewish people murdered Jesus.
And of course, Christ himself was a Jew and so was his apostles. The fact is that, actually, here's an interesting point. No, there isn't a distinction. The Sanhedrin was the one that killed Christ, not the irregular Jewish laity.
There's a distinction between being Jewish, of Jewish faith, and of being from the Israelites. The Israelites is a racial designation, while Judaism is a religious designation. So Benjamin Netanyahu is not from Israelites. He's actually Judaic in faith. But Jesus was from the Israelites, but he was not Jewish.
He was a Jew.
No,
he was called a rabbi. He was actually dedicated to the temple at the age of 12. So he was a Jew.
What to the Tel Aviv Tel Aviv rabbis would swear at Jesus, insult Jesus.
And so would the Muslims for calling him God. You would say that I'm committing shirk and condemned to eternal hellfire.
Do you condemn the Tel Aviv rabbis?
I condemn religiously Jews that call me out for saying that Christ is my God, but I equally do it, 1 second, to the Muslims that say and reject the sonhood of Christ.
It's getting dangerous now. Can you leave there? You're going to prevent. We need to prevent a breach of the peace.
Now, this consensual discussion was, for whatever reason, actually aggravating a lot of the Muslims who I imagine didn't want their sheikh to be put under pressure when surrounding the issues of Islam. However, when questioned by the police, have I breached the peace, the officers gave some sort of bumbling answer.
Yeah, you can read.
Yeah, I can read it. So you tried to say that I am breaching the peace. However, you got me out of that.
We're doing everything we can to prevent a breach of the peace.
Now, I'm happy.
Hence, you're being.
I am happy to stand here to film. However, I'm not happy to move an astronomical far away. And that's probably even counting where my hotel is. So I'm not doing it. How far is that?
Well, there's a map there for you.
Is that where it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a hotel there. Not on this side of the road. However, you need to identify what is the parameters of breaching the peace. No, you haven't. You haven't, and I've done that.
It's on body one.
It's on body one. We're going to see. What you're going to see is the fact that
you keep coming back into it, and every time you go back in there, okay, an argument breaks out, and you're at the centre.
Have I started these arguments? Have I even spoken to the people that have these arguments?
You're interviewing someone, and an argument breaks out.
No, I haven't even interviewed people. I interviewed one person. One person, and you've correctly identified the format as an interview.
Well, I've been there on 2 separate instances.
Okay, the first occasion was a man who came up to you and said, I don't like him because he does Speaker's Corner videos. The second gentleman assaulted me for no reason as I tried to ask him a question. The third time that you're now using... No, I am not.
Okay, all right. We're just... Have to arrest him and then he's going to have to sue you in court.
I'll take it. I'll take the arrest, and this will be laughable.
Yeah, arrest him and then he'll sue you, isn't it? Okay, all right. At the moment, mate, you're under arrest.
So I was arrested quite in a very cringy way, screamed "Liberate England." Of course, this tradition kept from originally the Lion of Epping.
Liberate England!
Liberate England!
This video is sponsored by Defiance Records, fantastic music company with Ramis and Mad Mix and Trevor John. Great music, really non-woke stuff, none of this transgenderism and wokeism. My friend Elon would greatly recommend it. It's brilliant stuff. We love it so much. I love their music personally. It's all of the hits that I use at my conference, so please visit their music. It's great.
The Albion.
However, the operation is sort of interesting. You had two stations. One that was a 5-minute distance away from Trinity Road, and the other was about an hour away on the other side of Birmingham. Now, the one that was 5 minutes away was used for the Palestinians as they needed interpreters, which kind of demonstrates the massive cost angle towards these demonstrations, and quite hilariously how these people aren't really British. But when I got there, the police began to realise that my solicitors that would be in London and my appropriate adults, which are all in London, would take longer than the 24-hour period if they wanted to attempt to charge me. So with a child, you need an appropriate adult to doc you, take your DNA, all that sort of lovely stuff. And without that, they essentially have no case. They have no opportunity to proceed forward. So I was in a cell for about 5 hours waiting, and unfortunately, they couldn't find anyone, in which they gave me a no further action. Now, of course, bobbling around is always going to cross wire with the news, and with Sheffield, a good way to keep these things financially beneficial is working with other people. So in collaboration with Vox Populi, I was actually doing some reporting for them on the UKIP demonstration, and the section 14 and kettle that they gave were incredibly difficult to navigate, especially considering I wasn't an activist.
Section 17 of the Public Order Act states that activists and journalists aren't prone to the same...
Making sure, for your safety, you are in the right place.
The people I'm reporting for right now, Vox Populi, they're a limited company set up as media.
What you're doing, though, for your safety, is going that way and round to that.
Okay, but that's for the sake of my safety. I can optionally opt out for that and decide to go through the quickest way.
For your safety, I would prefer you to go that way.
They ensured that I wasn't actually able to get to the UKIP demonstration, arguing that I could potentially be perceived as a stand-up to racism activist, which is quite hilarious considering outside of my journalism, my political opinions. Now this continued with the kettle given towards the end of the demonstration, in which case I was with the UKIP demonstration for about an hour, refusing to even let the elderly go through, even though it's a legal requirement if you're going to keep these people in this area to allow them to go to the toilet.
How you doing, Charlie? I thought you were into early retirement. What happened, man?
No, just taking a bit of time off so that young guns like yourself and a lot of other YouTubers can rise up like phoenixes from the ashes of my beard.
Charlie Veitch being someone that does a similar sort of method that I do surrounding the left whenever they get kind of violent.
All right. Chill.
But here's an exclusive video of me actually interacting with him.
We have the man, the myth, the legend, Charlie, outside officially being sponsored by UKIP. How are you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling good. It's nice to see so many healthy people who have successfully managed to have families, have jobs, pay tax.
And be fertile. That's a good one.
Fertility, go forth and multiply. So most of my content today is with the crazy, spiteful mutants of Antifa and the Balaclava Betas, because I support these guys, I wish them luck, and I think with the right Christian leadership, this country could be saved. I'm hopeful. Hope is very important for us. So.
And do you think it will get worse before it gets better? What do you think? What's the forecast for the next year?
It's gonna. At the moment, we're at daily mass stabbings. It'll only change when we get to hourly mass stabbings. Unfortunately, it's going to get worse.
Because of course, throughout the week, we've had a lot of, especially migrants, going out stabbing people. Do you think there will be a shift in government, or do you think there will be Labour austerity into the next general election?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that one. I do know, though, that 3.5 years until the next general election, it's going to get very bad. It's not going to get as bad as Rwanda, but it's going to give it a good go. I'm not even giving hyperbole. It's going to be very stabby, even stabbier than it is now. And
well, we're importing Rwanda, so
there you go. The Rwanda plan has been turned into import the stabby Rwandans.
Thank you.
Now, I'm a Christian. I believe that with everything that is bad, there is a good. But with every bad force, there of course is a counteracting good force to it. Especially being arrested for 5 hours, I think the producers at Talk TV were especially interested to speak to a 17-year-old who had been arrested on 3 separate occasions doing activism-related work.
Next up, we're going to be joined by a guy called Young Bob. Stick around. Jeff in Warrington. He said, hi Kev, one of those arrested in Birmingham last night was Young Bob. If we had more 17, 18-year-olds like Thomas, that's his real name, instead of your masked thugs all dressed in black, we would have some hope for the future of the country. Well, thank you for that, Jeff. And by a remarkable coincidence, guess who's in the studio? It's Young Bob, otherwise known as Thomas Moffat. Welcome to the studio.
Hi, how you doing?
Now, you were in, thanks for joining us. Now, you were in Birmingham last night, outside Aston Villa, outside Villa Park, watching that sort of demonstration going on. You're kind of reporting on it. You got arrested last night. You were up there talking, recording, filming, trying to get a sense of what was going on, as you said, sort of independent reporting. You got arrested, not charged. How did that happen? Tell us that.
Yeah, so I always like recording the sectarian violence, especially Birmingham. The independent candidate for Ladywood was there, of course, the main organiser for the event, and he received the second most of votes at the last general election.
Right.
So it's, of course, interesting to see the dynamics between the Muslim community and politics kind of play out. So reporting there, it's incredibly versatile, there's an incredibly airy atmosphere, immediately engaging with these people, just posing questions. I was threatened. A gentleman said that I would be killed if I continued my presence there. So the police tried to argue that my presence here as a journalist is somehow breaching the peace. However, the people assaulting me and threatening me weren't.
So, if I understand that situation right, Thomas, you were sort of outlining the sort of Christian ideas, and there was a Muslim guy there not agreeing with what you said, and yet the copper came up and said, you're the one who are making the situation dangerous. A bit of two-tier policing there. Get the Christian, never mind the Muslim. Did you deduce that that was kind of the situation?
Yes, so the Sheikh actually invited me on stage to discuss. I never really come here with a religious element. However, I spent 2 years at Speaker's Corner kind of engaging in that sort of topic.
Yeah.
So when he invited me on stage, I don't think that's breaching the peace. That's a consensual discussion.
Yeah.
So him kicking off or other people kicking off is not my problem.
How old are you?
17.
That's incredible. I've just had more common sense from you than having a professional politician in over 10 years.
Yeah. I'm feeling like a really thick old guy now. No, well said, well said.
Kevin O'Sullivan is a man that I've been watching quite regularly. There was always a tradition to watch it with my dad, Talk TV. So it was a great pleasure to get on there. It was quite nerve-wracking the first time being in a studio, outside of one occasion where I did a show for Revelation TV. However, it went extremely well. So they decided to have me on again on a Monday to discuss the BBC's quite scandalous editing of their Panorama documentary surrounding Trump.
One note of caution, always be careful.
Welcome to BBC Verified. Like I said, we are a team of investigative journalists here at the BBC.
It's important to check all the sources.
BBC ain't telling the truth to me.
What happened with Trump, I've done a lot of editing for a lot of the stuff that I do. They used B-roll to ensure the swift transition between each segments that they used to portray Trump as someone inciting a riot, which of course he didn't. They were taking at 2 different times within January 6th.
54 minutes apart.
Of course.
They actually said, the producers, that they would like to have me on a regular slot, half an hour every single week, which would go to legitimize my work and also expose me more to a greater audience.
Yeah, disclaimer, this is young Bob, and I repeat, I am not Jewish. I have never been Jewish. And all those AI memes circulating are just satire.
So, there's always been an interesting degree of dishonesty when it comes to the people that I'm always in opposition to. A famous fallacy that has always been used is a Mott and Bailey fallacy. And typically fallacies, what the method is behind it is always what it's named after. So imagine a castle and a moat. You're always going to retreat if someone's on the attack. So imagine, I don't know, we're talking about the marriage between the Prophet and Aisha.
Why did the Prophet marry Aisha at such a young age?
Why not? What's the problem?
Now, the difficult thing, your defense is going to be trying to defend the marriage between a 9-year-old and a 54-year-old. Now, you can always, outside of that, bring something which is easily defensible and have your opposition speak on that.
Aisha was not 9 years old, and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did not marry a child, and I can prove it to you in less than 45 seconds. Point number 1, she was 9 years old, but people mature at different stages. Back then, there was a lot more stress, and when there's a lot more stress in the environment, you age quicker, and she was mature regardless of her age. What? Point number 2, some scholars claim that she was actually 19 years old. There's a difference of opinion because when you look at hadiths and compare to the age of her sister, some people believe that she wasn't actually 9 years old and that was falsely narrated. And that brings me to point number 3, where age wasn't even tracked back then. Sometimes they started counting people's age after they hit puberty, or they started counting their age after they were 10 years old. So you can make a fair argument that she didn't even know her own age, and if she said she was 9 years old, it could completely be wrong.
Okay.
But regardless, I still don't deny that she was 9 years old. And if you really think that she's a child, you have to go to point number 4, is that she was engaged previously. She was engaged to someone before even there was talks of marrying Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And when we talk about marriage, at point number 5, you aren't even allowed to get married in Islam until you have passed the age of maturity. So it does not matter about the age of a woman to get married in Islam. It's all based around maturity. Is she mentally sound, and can she reproduce? And if she does not meet those 2 qualifications, she is not an adult. And you're not mentally sound if you're a child Therefore, she wasn't a child. And the best argument that I have for this is point number 6, is where she wrote 1/3 of all of the hadiths. She is the 3rd largest person who translated the hadiths, which is the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. If she was a child, how would she have been able to tell us in detail our Prophet's life and the lessons that we should learn from him? A child cannot do that. That logically does not make any sense. If you genuinely think that Aisha was a child, you're uneducated, you probably hate Islam, you probably get your news from Fox News. Get your facts straight. You are wrong. She was a grown woman.
Their argument is that a fully developed female can marry whoever they want regardless of the age difference. Now that's a more easily defendable position than, I don't know, a 9-year-old marrying a 54-year-old. So that is the Mott and Bailey fallacy, and you always need to be careful of whether someone is doing it. It's an informal fallacy, which just means they're technically just being rude, like that of being ad hoc, using special pleading. All of these things, yes, involve sound within an argument, but incredibly just rude and dishonest within a discussion. Now, just going towards the more basic fabrics of an argument, a syllogism is always a good way on the ground of formulating a discussion. That being listed premises that precede a point that are both sound and valid within your debate. So let's say, for example, all apples are red. Premise 2, I have an apple. Conclusion, therefore this apple will be red. The first premise establishes a rule, then preceding the second premise states that that rule applies there, therefore conclusion, this is the case. Of course, that's a way of kind of Lego piecing your argument together, and for someone who's very pictorial, it might actually be more of an effective strategy to enable someone to understand what you're saying.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, you good today?
I'm doing well, yourself?
Doing well. Love conception changed my mind.
Yep.
Are you a Christian? Well, I mean, you are, sir.
Yes, I am a Christian.
You Catholic, Protestant?
Eastern Orthodox.
So Eastern Orthodox?
Yes.
Well, it wouldn't matter if you were Catholic, but in the wise words of Pope Francis,
Yep.
who am I to judge? And this was said when it was...
Do you know who else spoke about abortion?
Go ahead.
Do you know what the Didache is? A 1st century document of the Apostles. I believe it's chapter 20 speaks about abortion, how it's wrong. So you can quote and say that, who am I to judge, which is a loose statement talking about, although it's a sin, I'm not going to publicly remark that it is. And he's really talking about the demonization of people who have abortions. Ultimately, the people who knew Christ said it was wrong. Because at the time of Rome, there were abortions. They would leave their newly borns in forests. So, no, I just think it's wrong.
So if I were to walk into that shop and take some of their sriracha sauce out and not pay, would you get up from that chair to stop me?
Pardon?
If I were to walk in, nick something from that shop, would you get up to stop me?
I mean, hopefully the law, I would just defer it onto like law enforcers to stop you stealing.
But the thing is, it's not your place to tell other people what they should be doing.
That's what laws are for.
Whether you agree with it or not. I personally...
Should the police stop you raping someone?
Were I a woman, I personally would not have an abortion. Unless it was incest or something along that line. But I don't believe it's mine or your place to go and tell somebody in a different situation to you whether they should be allowed to do something or not. It's not your place to judge, and obviously it's...
Can I respond there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, you know, like, I'm not telling people that they can individually dictate law to other people. But what I'm rather saying is that if we have established laws that people fight for, and we establish these laws, you can therefore enact them to stop their autonomy. I mean, we enact laws to stop people's autonomy in the cases of, for example, rape, murder, bank robbery. Like, it stops me from committing a crime.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm not actually.
So do you agree? Do you agree that argument doesn't work if we're talking about law?
Yeah, but look.
Okay, so why do you believe in abortion?
Why do I believe in abortion? Well, there are certain scenarios, right? Incest, rape, of say a minor, where it is necessary.
Outside of those cases, would you agree that a woman can have an abortion?
Personally, I would not agree. Though I also would believe it is my place to go and tell somebody.
Why
what
not?
They should do.
Because you initially just agreed that you can if it's illegal or if it's immoral.
If it's illegal, but I personally wouldn't go and tell somebody else if they are not causing any harm to other people what they can and can't do.
But the fetus is an individual human being that you're disaffecting by aborting it, you're ending its life. Secondly, again, just because it's not your place to say doesn't mean it's not the place of the government to say, and we determine that based on moral principles. So I think your argument firstly falls back on the person that you initially agreed doesn't follow through, and then the second thing on whether it's just not my place to say. Well, we're talking about legislation, my friend. I mean, I'm not the dictator of the United Kingdom, but certainly if we can get a majority, we can certainly agree.
See, so
why, and also I want to pose you this question. What is the difference in moral worth to an aborted fetus because of incest and rape, and one from just a normative case of the woman just couldn't afford the baby? What is the moral difference of that particular fetus?
Were it to be incest or rape, if it was rape, it could be rape minor. It could genuinely pose a risk to the mother of such child. If it is rape, they have not agreed to have that in any way.
Not my question. I said, what is the moral difference of the fetus? You're talking about the mother still, I'm talking about the fetus. You believe that it reaches a certain threshold of rights to continue to live after, or rather, if it's not of the product of incest and rape. So what is the moral difference?
Let me respond in a different way to that. Are you a vegan?
Pardon?
Are you a vegan?
Of course not.
Of course not, no. Well, I was vegetarian for 10 years. I'm not. I love a good burger, cheeky steak and everything. But, to be honest, when a baby is born, can they talk? Can they shake your hand? Can they? Are they a civilized proper being? And I'm not trying to say that they're not human or anything, but in the same way that one would abort a fetus, it is roughly similar to how you would end a chicken's life to eat it.
Wait, so you give the same moral value to a chicken than you do a fetus?
I do, yes.
Okay. Firstly, that's ridiculous. We're of the same human species as a fetus. It's just on a lesser stage of development than you are. Secondly, I think that's it's inconsistent with your position, right? Because you originally said that you would allow for a fetus to survive if it wasn't the product of incest and rape. So of course you do, it's just arbitrarily defined to whatever is convenient for the mother. Now in the case of rape, for example, actually because we enforce a society that believes that abortion is the only valid option when it comes to rape, a lot of women that still hold to the moral philosophy that they're killing an innocent life actually have a higher rate than suicide compared to ones that just think it's just aborting a clump of cells. So rape as this broadsheet explanation for why we should have abortions only simply exemplifies the chances of this woman committing suicide, because she's still going with the trauma of the rape that's not resolved, and you also have the moral blunt of killing an innocent life. So the best thing to happen was, of course, I'm a Christian. This derived understanding that we should take the best from the bad, that of course being a new life being formed out of a terrible, heinous event that should have never happened in the first place. But that's still a life that has human rights, the essential right to survive.
So, are you saying, roughly, that instead of abortion we should basically have a better adoption system, so they can have the baby, if it doesn't pose risk to the mother, and they can just give it away in a way?
Yeah, so we should invest in social services, to take care, and we should invest in churches being the epicenter of every single community. Because do you notice how the Muslims don't have this issue? It's because they have a good community, they have a good mosque. Same thing with if we had better churches.
Yeah, but they also have high rates of incest and custody.
Well, that's from other. That's more culture.
That's a separate problem.
But you're not going to see a British convert to Islam marrying their cousin.
So
it's mostly from other countries in which they also happen to be Muslim. You need to separate culture and religion, because although yes, it is permitted in their religion, it's mostly influenced from their culture.
So you're saying social services and adoption is the alternative to abortion. What's your stance on homosexuality?
Pardon?
What is your stance on homosexuality?
In a secular society, we should allow for it. It's fine.
I fully agree, and I believe in the cases of rape and incest, there should be legislation to permit abortion.
Why?
And in certain cases where it is harmful to the mother, but in most of the cases, I think we shouldn't make it illegal. But I think we should strongly encourage adoption, and realistically, because I have family friends.
The only way you're going to do that, by the way, is through banning abortions.
Sorry?
The only way you're going to do it is banning abortions. I mean, for example, we see on the labels of cigarette packets, this is going to cause you lung cancer.
Yeah.
And now that's the sort of model that you're going by for abortion. Let's just de-incentivize it.
Yeah.
And they should stop suddenly having abortions.
Yeah.
Okay, they did that with cigarettes. What happened?
Yeah.
People are still smoking. So you need to ban the thing in order to incentivize the good thing. Now, again, you're still saying for the sake of rape and incest. And I agree with incest because it's a terrible way of living. To a degree, I think that we can compromise on that. However, rape, I think the fact is you're affording rights arbitrarily based on things that you're not giving a moral value to.
I'm listening.
No. So, do you accept that there is certain circumstances where abortion is a necessary step?
Could you give me an example?
13-year-old's rape.
Well, I know this sounds pretty crude, but if she's physically able to deliver, that's not medically necessary.
Crikey.
But I'm just saying that's not what the definition of necessary is. There is still a very messed up world in which that could take place.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Look, I have my opinions, you have yours. You're not going to convince me of yours, I'm not convinced of your mine. We can both accept that. But what I think we need is a place, a society where it is very able to access an abortion when it is in a necessary case, and
You still haven't given me an example.
We disagree where we say where we believe it's necessary. I think if it's 13-year-olds who've been raped, I think that is a necessary case, and I do agree with you. We should also invest more in social services and encourage adoption.
But the only way we're going to do that is banning abortion.
And we should keep them. Well, no, I don't think we should ban abortion, but we can agree to disagree. It's a free world.
Have a good one, my friend. What's your name?
Max Gray.
Yeah.
I mean, off camera, I agree with you more than I say, but I do understand.
Again, we don't have the finances, and speaking on finances, if you want to cup yourself a fantastic cup for the festive season, or a very seasonal cap that says "Make Britain Church Again," you can go to shop.crossandcorner.org. You can support us at the Cross and Corner team to finance stands, hiring interns and cameramen, to ensure that we have a continued Christian conservative movement here in the UK. Outside of that, I've been Young Bob. Have a very happy day and festive season, and that has been the Sideshow Bob.